Scott has a question that says, once a tree of heaven has been cut down, what is the best way to kill the stump and roots? Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think, there's a technique called hack and squirt. And if you're in a position where you're comfortable using an herbicide, treating the stump or the exposed trunk after you've cut into it to girdle it, or if you cut it down, then spraying it with an appropriate labeled herbicide. That is one of the best ways to do that. Even with that, you might have some sprouts that appear the following year. So some follow-up, either removing those sprouts manually or treating again with a labeled herbicide would be the way to go. But follow-up is often needed because it's a tenacious tree that wants to resprout.
Thank you. There is another question in the chat kind of related to the first one about managing Ailanthus. As far as girdling, should it be straight around with 2-inch gaps or 2-inch gaps and alternating? I think that, Brian, you were talking about this before. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll say what I think and would welcome additional information from any of the other panelists, but I have just seen the 2-inch gap completely encircling it. And then if that's done in the winter, I've seen some Ailanthus. Actually, today I was out at a property where they did that to the Ailanthus. The Ailanthus tree is still leafing out. The leaves aren't as big. It's going to take a while to kill that. Even though most of the living vascular tissue is right beneath the bark, there is some interior vascular tissue that gets tapped into when it loses that because of girdling. So it's kind of a slow death.
Yeah, I would just say that it's it's around the entire circumference of the tree, a 2-inch gap in height, and then another entire circumference of the tree. It's not like a dot and dash. It's a spacing between the two girdling, entire circumference girdling.
Yeah.
And on that topic, I'm going to go to another question. So it relates to Tree of Heaven as well. So we're talking about, we've been talking about managing Tree of Heaven, but one important question is, what should you actually do if you do find Tree of Heaven? So should you manage it? Will getting rid of Tree of Heaven in a location actually help with limiting spotted lanternfly?
Wants to go first? Yeah, I think at one point, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we were thinking, yeah, if you eliminate your Ailanthus or Tree of Heaven, you're going to go a long way to control spotted lanternfly. We no longer feel that way. In fact, there are some vineyard owners in Pennsylvania who are very motivated to eliminate as many spotted lanternfly as possible, or to reduce the population. They went out into their woodland and specifically removed the Ailanthus trees. Really didn't notice a significant difference in the population of spotted lanternfly that moved in. Now they're moving into grape, one of their favorite hosts at the end of the season. So that was quite a magnet, and they could move further than we had thought. So yeah, it might help, but unless you follow up and completely kill the sprouts that come up, just having multiple trees of the succulent growth coming up from the trunk could actually make the situation worse.
Yeah, and I'll add to what Brian had said. You know, in Pennsylvania, when they first started the control program, they went around and removed certain sects of the Tree of Heaven to limit the numbers, to try and concentrate the movement of spotted lanternfly to those trees. Now they're starting to see some decline in those trees, and so therefore, I think based on that, you know, hindsight's obviously 2020, but looking back, I think they probably would have changed their approach. And I think going forward into New York, I don't think we'd advocate removing Ailanthus unless we wanted to try and get an actual good, quick control. So when I say that, what I'm saying is in Ithaca, we did remove trees. We didn't have We had a small pocket infestation. We didn't have any ability to treat because it was during the winter months. So the only option we had available was to get rid of those egg masses. And to get rid of those egg masses, we actually had to remove those trees because they were so far up in the trees. So that was an extreme case. I think in a general management standpoint and general management strategy, probably not a good idea to remove Ailanthus because that may serve to be a great control measure or trap tree down the road.
Yep. If you know where Ailanthus is, just keep an eye on that. And yeah, if it's on your property, it could be a tree that would be targeted with a systemic insecticide. If you had somebody come out and treat that, that could kill quite a few spotted lanternfly.
And just to clarify our approach in Ithaca, it wasn't just Ailanthus, it was all the trees in that area that were around infested trees. So we didn't just target Ailanthus, we targeted all the trees to try and get those egg masses out of there. Time will tell, see if we were, if that action was correct or not.
Ethan mentioned egg masses. So egg masses can be found on anything, any flat surface. So it does not have a preferred tree to lay its eggs on. It just any flat surface is fair game as far as egg masses. So that was a slightly different situation. It wasn't a feeding on the tree. It was just an available flat surface.
Thank you. And so sounds like whether or not Ailanthus should be managed and how to manage it is a very complicated question. It kind of depends. And that makes this next question even more complicated, but it's been up there for a while, so I think we should try to address it at least. So it's, are there any grants that towns or independent groups can apply for managing Tree of Heaven? One example would be on roadways. Another example could be on your property or something. I know we had discussed this a little bit before the webinar with some of us. Do you want to say what you were thinking, Ethan?
Sure. So through New York State Ag Markets, I'm not aware of anything. I do know that in the past, working on emerald ash borer and some other invasive species, New York State DEC through their urban forestry program, street tree program, has offered grants for control of invasive species. That being said, I'm not sure if control of Tree of Heaven would qualify with that. I know they've used that program for control of emerald ash borer, street tree inventories for ash trees and things of that nature. We'll have to see. But I'm not aware of any grant program at the state level that would affect control of Tree of Heaven. There may be something at a local level. There may be a local urban street tree commission, depending on where you live. But on a state level, I'm not aware of anything.
Yeah, I would recommend that people, if anyone does know, it would probably be your PRISM. So I would encourage people to check your PRISM's website, even reach out to them. They would at least be able to point you in the next direction or give you some recommendations or figure out what the next steps are or how important it is to remove Ailanthus in your specific location and that sort of thing.
I was
Yeah.
I was going to bring up the prisms as well because they may have money in their budgets that can be used on a case by case basis for a range of invasive species control, but it varies from prism to prism, year to year, so you would have to check in with them locally.
I see one here. It says, what season do you feel is best for girdling? I'll answer that part first. The summertime or spring. And so the idea there is if you were to wait until the fall when the leaves drop, then the nutrients from that growing season are going back into the root system and to the trunk. And so the buds will have that to draw on the following year. But if you can starve it out during the growing season, that's the best time to do it. But anytime will work. And yeah, it doesn't hurt to go in multiple times. If you're using like a chainsaw or something, you do have to be careful. If you go in, too far, you could potentially be creating a hazardous tree. So you want to look around and make sure there's no targets nearby. sidewalks, pathways, even through the woods, just to be safe about it. But hopefully you'll end up with a dead standing tree that could be used for wildlife eventually. And then the second one was, yeah, multiple girdling attempts. Yes, you can do that again if it seems to be healing over, going like a foot away and making another band can be done.
Thank you.